Hello, my name is Karen Stocks, and I'll be talking today about the Deep Ocean Observing Strategy, which we call DOOS. The vision of DOOS is to create a globally integrated network of systems that observe the deep ocean effectively in support of science, policy, and planning for sustainable oceans. And DOOS is carrying this work forward on several fronts. So it is working to build an understanding of what it is most important to observe, and it's doing this within the Global Ocean Observing, or GOOS, framework of defining essential ocean variables to measure. Further, it's providing a hub for integration opportunities. It is working to coordinate observations across different observatories. Along with that, it's developing requirements for deep observing and building and fostering increased readiness in observing technologies and techniques. It is working to foster the availability, discoverability, and usability of deep ocean data, and we'll talk about that more later. And it's creating a common community science implementation plan for deep ocean observing that also advocates for the importance and the need for deep observations. You can see here the structure of DOOS. I'd like to point out that it is international. We currently have 8 countries represented on the steering committee and more involved in other ways. And the work is moved forward through a set of task teams. One of those is the Data and Cyber Infrastructure Task Team that I lead. And I'd like to note that we are fortunate to have International Seabed Authority representation on that task team already. GOOS has moved the work forward to date in several ways. One is by defining a set of overarching science questions. If you look at the strategic implementation guide that GOOS has on its that DOOS has on its website, these are explained in more detail, but I wanted to put them up because I think there are some that are relevant to ISA interests, particularly number 3, understanding marine deep sea biodiversity and ecosystem services in light of human-induced as well as natural changes. This is a high-level thumbnail of DOOS and its operations. It's a bit busy, but I put it up to remind myself to say a couple of things. First of all, DOOS is much more than just the deep observatories. It works to include and create connections with a wide variety of stakeholders for deep ocean data and deep ocean policy concerns. Second, it's motivated certainly by science and scientific questions, but also by societal mandates. And it wants the outcomes of deep ocean observing to move through science and into societal impact. Some of the other specific work that DOOS has done so far is to evaluate the GOOS essential ocean variables that have already been defined, to look at their applicability to the deep sea, and to consider additional variables that are critical to the deep sea but may not be within the GOOS framework already. Part of the reason I put this up is that the ISA deep data, even though it wasn't developed with the GOOS EOV framework in mind, does collect data on variables that are within this framework. So I think that there could be connections there. DOOS does have a focus on data. It is supporting what we call FAIR data. FAIR means findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. And so it's working to identify and then develop strategies for overcoming barriers to FAIR data, particularly working across agency, national, and disciplinary boundaries. Towards that end, we will be documenting DOOS endorsed recommended best practices. So this is an effort to look at the current deep ocean data landscape and to identify that small set of tractable practices or standards or protocols that would do the most to move this community forward with respect to data, and then supporting that with training and outreach activities. This is a demonstration of the kind of work that DOOS wants to move forward. It was done by Steve Diggs at Scripps under EarthCube funding in the US, and it's using a technology called Schema.org, also known as Science on Schema. And in this particular example, it took data from 2 completely separate ocean data portals, CCHDO, which holds the GO ship as well as other hydrographic data, and BecoDemo, which has biological and chemical oceanographic data. And through the implementation of the Schema.org, which is a fairly lightweight technology, they could demonstrate a integrated data search and discovery portal across those two data sets. So this is something that we are looking to move forward on a larger scale in the future. DEWS as a whole is also working on demonstration projects. These are particular regions of focus that we think can provide a pathway or a blueprint for global deep ocean observing technology readiness and FAIR data. So by working and leveraging and coordinating existing efforts in these areas, we hope to demonstrate the kinds of outcomes that can come from the sort of coordination and integration that DEWS is working towards. At present, DEWS has defined 3 demonstration projects in the Azores, in the Northeast Pacific, and the one that may be of most interest to ISA, the Clarion-Clipperton Zone, which I'll call the CCZ. Within those demonstrations, the data component, the first step of that is within that region to find, try to access and evaluate all the available data from the demonstration sites. And then to step back and to say, okay, what are the current practices and patterns with respect to how these data are being served? Are there standards, are there protocols, are there commonalities? And then where are the strengths and weaknesses with respect to FAIR? Where are the gaps? And then to use that to inform priorities for the best practices work. What sort of parts in that pipeline should be targeted for most improvement, as well as where is training needed? And that's a first step towards ultimately we want to do a demonstration of what results you can get when you do have integrated data that can be used together. I'd like to finish with a couple of thoughts about how deep data might integrate with or collaborate with DEWS, and also reciprocally, how DEWS might be able to serve deep data. So DEWS is interested in relationship with deep data, with collaboration. Deep data includes observations on essential ocean variables that are of high interest to DEWS priority science. And regions such as the CCZ are ones where, in addition to the mining concerns, there are interesting scientific questions to address as well. For that reason, we think deep data can be a critical contributor to the CCZ demonstration project with the data holdings that deep data have. And we also, stepping back, see that deep data is a pathfinder project as a cross-disciplinary geospatial deep ocean data system. There aren't many large-scale cross-disciplinary deep ocean data systems in existence, so the experience of ISA, I think, will be valuable for the rest of the community as well. So we hope that you may be willing to participate in future activities such as workshops to share that knowledge. And then some thoughts on how DEWS might be able to support deep data. DEWS does provide a forum for alignment with both GOOS and global observatory practices in general. I noticed on the agenda for this meeting, there was a goal of seeking access to experience on data management with other global data initiatives. We think the DEWS provides a forum for that. It also allows perhaps broader use and reuse of data that are in deep data, particularly in the context of other regional data. I've got a little map on the right that shows some of the observatory assets within the tropical Pacific observing system. The different colored dots represent different kinds of drifters and buoys and ship tracks and things. So you can see that there are additional data within the region where integration might be of interest. Integration with respect to users, outside users interested in deep data, but also reciprocally that these data might provide some important context, hydrographic, current information, perhaps information of the variability, some biological attributes that could support ISA goals and interests. So with that, I'll finish. I invite you to have a look at deepoceanobserving.org, the website where we have more documentation and information about DEWS. If you want to get on the mailing list, we have a email there that you can contact. And I thank you for your time, and I look forward to the discussion in the coming workshop. Thank you.